All right, so I'm recording this as well. We have a young woman, Jessica, who's already gone off to college on the 2nd of January. So I'm going to send this to her. And also maybe since I haven't recorded, I'll use it for future leadership candidates as well. But either way, I want to acknowledge you guys in particular because it is early. And I know that if you didn't have to be, and you didn't have to be here, but if you didn't choose to be here, you would not be awake right now. I know this. So I do want to acknowledge you, number one, just for being here and investing in yourself and your opportunity, and also, quite frankly, for being candidates. You know, when I talk to you guys privately and in text messages and at our division meeting on Monday, you guys have really made a statement so far with just who you are as a person, your attitude, your energy, your work ethic, a couple other things I've seen. And you guys are definitely candidates for a promotion for Crystal, since you're staying local, potentially sooner than later. And then for you gentlemen and some of our people who are out of area to be able to, quite frankly, work for a couple of days or a couple of weeks in the winter break and then come back in the summer with a promotion is pretty exciting. So I do want to give you guys kudos for making yourself a candidate. My objective for this morning, I'm going to stick and move. I don't want us to take this too much past 9 o'clock. But I'm going to cover what an assistant manager does, what that kind of looks like, what the roles and the duties look like. I am going to cover some of the drawbacks of being an assistant manager because it's not all sunshine and rainbows. John, you stop nodding your head. It's true. It's not all sunshine and rainbows. And I will cover the pay. And if it's something that you are not interested in, cool, no worries. And if it is, I'll show you what to do to put yourself in a position for that. Sound good? Mm-hmm. Wonderful. So let's go ahead and get into it. First off, what does an assistant manager do? And I made an effort. I didn't intend to completely script out what I'm going to say on the slides, but I wanted to make sure I had good visuals to be able to send to our out-of-area people. So bear with me. I would encourage you to take some notes. You don't obviously need to write down every single thing on the slides. But what does an assistant manager do? Their main job is to support me and support the local field operations in the office here. The 3 KRAs, these are key results areas. And these are the areas that move the business forward, are recruiting, sales, and development. And recruiting is obviously bringing more people on the team, getting people to apply for the position, whether it's through one of our internet job boards, our campus, a personal recruit. What's nice is that we have all of those things represented. And obviously big armies beat little armies, so the biggest team will almost always win. And then of course sales is exactly what it sounds like. It's leading people to make money and sell some knives. And then development is developing future leaders. And I like to look at the assistant managers like the starting players on the team, or they're the team captains. And number one is they lead our team today, and also they are the top candidates for future promotions. Okay, some of the perks of being an assistant manager. This isn't an exhaustive list, but when I was doing this preparation, these are some of the things that came to my mind. The biggest one for me that I think about is that it's a real leadership opportunity. All right, you get to have a real impact on people and on the team. One of my favorite stories, and John will attest to this one, is that this time last year, Bryce Zemer was a brand new baby sales rep, if you can imagine, right? And I think he was at $7,000 or $8,000 for his fast start, and it was the last day, and he was kind of throwing in the towel on a 10K fast start. That was his goal, was to sell 10 grand, hit all the things, and he was starting to throw in the towel. And John had a conversation with him first thing in the morning where they dug in, and then John talked to him all the way through the day, helped inspire, motivate, instruct, all the things, and Bryce actually ended up selling $12,000.
12,136.
I know, it's on the board. 12,000. Thank you, John.
I thought he had it off the top of his head.
And made $2,500, and with this double credit, got all the way to the $15,000 level. And then he's now Bryce Zemer, right? And John had a very real hand. He gives me a hard time because it was a scheduled day off, and he's like, "You weren't answering your phone. You wouldn't talk to Bryce," which is entirely true. I wouldn't, right? I'm a married man. I work my 5, sometimes 6 days a week, and then that one day is protected for my wife and family. And without the assistant manager team, Bryce would not have sold $12,000 in his fast start, and he would probably still be Bryce Zemer, but it would be a very different version of the story. And John, even though that was a year ago, I think John takes more pride in that story than he does in having sold $1,400 yesterday and already sold over $4,000 for the push and made $2,000 in a week. Right. So it's a very real leadership opportunity. It's not your average assistant manager in a retail store where you just have a key and have all the worst shifts and you're on call all the time for barely more than minimum wage. And it's definitely not an internship where you're just getting coffee and making copies, which is pretty exciting. It's relevant resume experience regardless of what you're going to do. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you're going to be in business or not. Doesn't matter if you're going to be a manager or not. The skills that you learn are really how to influence and lead people. And that's relevant to being a police officer. It's relevant to being a doctor, a coach, all the things, which is exciting. You get a dual income. I'll cover pay toward the end, but you get paid both off your personal sales as well as what the office sells as a whole. You get a close relationship with the DM team. Obviously, you'd work closely with me, but I thought it was pretty cool yesterday. We got to the division meeting and Bryce showed up early, and all the other district managers around the division were going up like, Bryce, what? And it was really cool. I was like, man, this is awesome that you get to form relationships with the rest of the district team. You get exclusive contests. There's incentives, there's prizes, there's a special trip that's really only for the assistant managers and district managers, and then maybe like 1 or 2 sales reps that perform at an absurdly high level. You get future opportunities, whether that's getting into the events team, which we'll cover later on, but it's where you get to set up vendor booths and people just come up to you and ask if they can buy knives or if you can come over and do an appointment for them. It could lead to being a branch manager or a district manager, which is where you essentially run your own office, or it could lead to being a CSP, which is what Ben Howard does. But there's future opportunities involved.
Right, thanks.
The professional growth is a big one, and the personal growth. You will become a better version of yourself. And one of the other ones is that selling Cutco gets easier. When you're in a spot where you're teaching other people how to sell, you get better at selling, right, just through. So those are some of the things that I came up with. John or Kayla, I didn't ask you guys to prepare anything or have any thoughts together, but does anything else come to your mind, or is that a pretty solid list?
Check.
Cool.
Oh, wait. We talk about bonus levels and how AM is a little bit easier.
Only in the non-summer.
Sure. Oh, we're talking about summer. Gotcha.
Good.
That's it. Yeah.
Cool. I think it's a good list too. Wonderful. So here's our 2018 mission. And this I would like you guys to have, because this is what we're building towards this year. The mission is to have 400 recruits, 400 new sales reps. And that's going to come from a variety of sources that I'll get to in a little bit. The goal is to sell a $750,000 year. And our first big push of the summer. We have our push right now for the professional development conference going on right now. By the way, I'm proud to tell you the team sold just shy of $8,000 yesterday. So
nice.
Yeah, the best day of 2018 so far.
Mm-hmm.
Many more to come, right? But our first big push of the year, the one where people really go after it and just grind and hustle, and the first time that people are really selling a lot of Cutcos in the summer, is our SEC push. Stands for Summer Elevation Conference. I don't have the dates yet, but it's usually the end of May, early June. And typically, if we hit that push hard, the entire summer flows. All right, so the goal is to build a $50,000 push for that one. And then I want to have 10 people on key staff. So the goal is to have a layer of assistant managers and then key staff members underneath them, and then the rest of our team and our bench by May 30th. And at the end of summer, my goal is to induct 30 people into Leadership Academy, which would be development and training for the 2019 leaders.
Do we usually have a lot more sales reps in the summer?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, yes.
The company, 70% of our annual sales come in the summer.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's just the nature of working with students. And, obviously we get some people like yourself who are willing and able to work in the winter break. but a lot of students are not. And you could look at your own friends, and most of them are just chilling, you know.
Yeah.
But in the summertime, it's kind of standard that everybody gets a job.
Mhm.
So yeah, the summertime is big. It's big. So let's talk about some of the duties that are involved in being an assistant manager. This is not an exhaustive list, but it's a pretty damn good list. Number one is Facebook Jumpstart, and this is social media recruitment, right? I know right now a lot of people are really interested in social media marketing and social media stuff. And what's really cool is that our company in the past 2 years has really developed an entire social media department, and we use Facebook and Instagram and Snapchat to be able to get the word out in the business. And you guys are able to do that because your peer group are the same people that would be your friends on Facebook or Instagram or Snapchat, and they're the same people that we would want to target for working with us. So we have a full program that for you would teach you the social media marketing skill set and how to do that. And also it helps us reach out and target people. So I'll cover more details on that one at a later time, but we use those. We have Snapchat takeovers, which are a lot of fun. I can show you a video of what that looks like later, and then I may actually, Chris, I've done this with you, haven't I?
No, it was what's her
I know I did it with Lorraine.
Lorraine, yeah.
Yeah, cool. I might
I don't
do
have a
Snapchat. No, Snapchat takeover with you guys. One of the biggest ones is scheduling PRs for interviews. PRs are personal recruits. They're people that came recommended to the team by someone else. So Kane, you were a PR of Sean. And that's one of the biggest ones is scheduling people for interviews, because we always get referrals from the end of the interviews and from text messages and from training. And getting those people in for interviews is probably the number one most impactful role for building the team. And then, of course, running interviews, which I don't know about you guys, but I think it's kind of cool when you're 18, 19 years old and you're interviewing people that are older than you and they call you sir and ma'am. All right, John and Kayla, you can attest to that. Look at Kayla's grin. That's the answer right there. Right. In terms of sales, this is sales management. Number one is obviously personally selling Cutco. All of my assistant managers sell $10,000 plus in the summer personally. And again, we'll cover pay later, but they do make their normal percentage. So if they're at 20, 25, 30%, that doesn't change, right? And then on top of that, they do a lot of field training, which is where they either bring people on their appointment to shadow them, or they go on someone's appointment to help them get better. They do PCs. I like to call them powwows, but it's one-on-one management, sitting down with a rep, helping them get good. They take the manager hotline, and when you guys already know from yourselves calling in, whether it's me or Kayla or Jack or John, we always try to have somebody on duty, right, to field those calls. And the assistant manager team takes that. They speak at team events, which is kind of cool because they get to develop and learn public speaking skills. And also they run team events like phone jams, PSP meetings, team meetings, and etc. And then the last role is development, right? And the job of a leader is to replace themselves, right? The job of a leader is to replace themselves. And there's a quote I couldn't figure out. I was looking online last night, even I was trying to figure out who said it. I couldn't find it. But it is a quote that we use a lot here, and I really do believe in it, that to be successful, we must first help other people be successful. Right? There's another version of it from MJ DeMarco. He wrote about it in The Millionaire Fastlane. And the way that he phrased it was that the more people that you help to become millionaires, the faster you will be a millionaire yourself. Right? And I really believe in that. So that's what it's all about. So some of the key things are WIFT conversations. WIFT, by the way, means what's in it for them. And you could imagine, right? We would never do this. This isn't how we run our business. But I worked in a sales company one time where the manager wanted us to sell so that he could do fun stuff. Right? He was like, hey guys, I want to go see the Nationals this week and I want to get upgraded seats. So I need you to sell $5,000 today. Well, how motivated were we to sell $5,000? F that. By the way, if we sold $5,000, we would have made $1,000. But I was like, I don't like you and I don't care about you going to the game. So I'd rather not sell $5,000 and I'd rather not make $1,000. Right? Versus Sean's a great example. Every time we talk to Sean, I've never even talked about any of my personal goals. I really don't even talk about the team goal that much, but it's like talking about his promotion, and then he wants to hit his promotions. By the way, he's only 2,700 away from Dirty 30, right? Obviously, when he hits that, there will be benefits for the management team, of course, but I really don't need Sean to care about my goals or my things. If I help Sean hit his goals, we'll be fine in the process, So that's what WIFT is all about. And then, of course, right, one of the big things is just promoting the opportunity, sharing with people. And, I love when you guys are young professionals and you can share your story and talk about how long you've been in the business. And, in some cases, like, hey, I worked for 2 or 3 weeks over the winter break and now I'm running the ship, I think that's a really cool story to promote, and it makes people want that, just like when I tell you guys about Bryce's story. And then I said this at the beginning, but the goal is to replace yourself. The goal, obviously, when Kayla and Jack and Bryce get promoted to open up their own offices this summer, number one is they don't want to leave me without a staff, so they want to help replace themselves and get someone else on the team. But also, the faster you can replace yourself, the faster you're eligible for the next promotion, right? You can imagine if we were, sorry, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. The faster you replace yourself, the faster you're eligible for another promotion. And one thing I love about Vector is that you don't get promoted based on how long you've been here. You get promoted based on your performance and activity level. I do want to cover some of the drawbacks of the position. And don't look at the slide yet, if you would. It was funny. I was running this by my wife last night. I've run this meeting several times, but I've never had visual aids. And I was like, it would be really nice if I didn't have to rewrite this meeting every time I run it, and if I had something visual. So I put the slides together last night, but it was funny. I showed it to my wife because I wanted her input on them, and she saw this slide and she goes, "That's really negative." And I was like, "Yeah, it's supposed to be. Don't worry." But I do want to be very upfront, right? And I said this at the beginning, but if I just promised you sunshine and rainbows, and you didn't understand any of the downsides of being an assistant manager, you'd quit as soon as things got hard. I'd rather have you, A, know what it looks like going in, and B, if you don't want it, that's okay. But if you do want it, you'll be better prepared for it, right? So these are some of the things I came up with. Number one, quite frankly, it is less flexible. One of the biggest perks of being a sales rep is that you really do get to make your own schedule. We have a couple of structured events in the office every week. We usually have a PSP meeting and a team meeting every week, and then occasionally there's stuff like a division meeting or something similar. But for the most part, you really get to write your own schedule. You can take off whenever you feel like it, right? The other day, Sean called me, or I called him, and I was like, "Hey, what's your day look like?" He's like, "I'm taking off." I was like, "Oh, okay." Right? And you just don't get to do that as an assistant manager to the same degree. You do obviously still get some flexibility, of course, but it is more structured because we're going to put you on the schedule to have office hours and things like that. There's higher expectations of you, just in attitude and performance. And you guys have all heard, speed of the leader, speed of the team. So we do expect the assistant manager team. Obviously, I set the pace for everybody. I'll bring you with me. I wouldn't ask you to do something I wouldn't do myself. But the assistant manager team does set the pace in terms of attitude and performance. And you guys saw, and I was super proud of this at the division meeting when all 4 of our assistant managers would have won trophies. I wish there were 4 trophies to give because we would have won all 4, right? But I was super proud of that, man. Super proud. They do have increased accountability, right? I want to get updates all the time, and Kayla and John, you can vouch, right? I do have high expectations that if you're on the schedule to do something, you're going to get it done, right? Yep. You will have to be uncomfortable at times. One of the biggest perks of being in management or leadership is that you grow up, right? It will make you a better version of yourself. But the very nature of growing is that you have to do things you haven't done before. So there will be times that it won't be the most comfortable. And the other one is just, it's an emotional roller coaster. Quite frankly, when you guys are sales reps, you know what it feels like when you make a sale. Right? You know how exciting it is, especially if you sell a set or $1,000 order or you get a promotion, right? You know the elation that comes with that. And you also know what it feels like when you have a no sale, right? Or when an appointment like cancels, or worse, you show up at the house and they're not even there. Right? But it is. It's an emotional process, right? And in management, it's much the same. The ups are higher, right? And I'll tell you, even for me, I've been doing this for 13 years. And just the nature, right? A lot, I would imagine, like sports or anything else, just the more you're in it, the less of an emotional roller coaster it is. But even me last night, we sold $8,000, and it was more than I expected to sell because we had a couple of large orders. We had Sean with a signature set. John sold a flatware chest. Ben Howard was really cute. He called me, and his thing, whenever he has something exciting to say, he goes, "I'll punch you in the face." So he's like, "Hey, it's Ben. I'm calling with a punch you in the face update." And I was like, "All right, Ben, what'd you sell?" And he goes, "I sold a signature set and 2 flatware chests. I had 6 appointments, 5 sales." And I was like, "Cool, Ben. Congratulations. How'd you do on referrals?" But anyway, we did celebrate together last night. He made like $2,500 yesterday. It wasn't a bad day for him. But either way, even for me, as I went back to my private office at home. I was working on the visual stuff, and even I was feeling really excited, and I was texting these guys at like 11 o'clock last night, I think. Yeah. So the ups are definitely up, and then the lows are low. When you have a rough day, and it does happen sometimes that one of your favorite people quits, or they have a bad day, and you feel hurt for them, right? That happens. And it's an emotional process. For Kayla and John specifically, anything else that you can think of, just drawbacks of being an assistant manager?
I want to re-emphasize we'll have to be uncomfortable at times. Because there's a lot of points where sometimes where there's a new experience where you might have to deal with a rep who's being, in short, kind of troublesome, whether a trainee or whatnot. And I'm gonna tell you, in the spur of the moment, I didn't know how to handle it. But going back from when I first started in AM to now, or even just like a semester or a season later, like I go back to that, like, oh, I know how to handle this. So in the spur of the moment, those uncomfortable moments are going to be really uncomfortable, but you're going to be so surprised at yourself later and how you're able to now overcome it. It's pretty cool.
Cool. To piggyback off of that, actually, and Kayla, I'll ask for your input too if you have something. But one of the drawbacks with an upside, and I know exactly what John is talking about, there will be sometimes that like a situation or a fire pops up and I'm not available, and I'm like, "Hey, I need you to put out this fire." And the first response, like John said, is like, "Oh crap, I don't know how to put out the fire." Right. But at the same time, one of the nice things is that our assistant managers are empowered to act on my behalf with my authority, and they're allowed to be wrong. Right. And I've told John this many times, like, "Hey, I don't care if you mess up or make mistakes. As long as you give your best effort, I won't be mad at you." Right. And I said, we'll discuss at the end. And, if you did the wrong thing, I'll teach you what you should have done. But if you did the right thing, great. But either way, as long as you acted in good faith, I won't be mad at you either way. So one of the nice things that our assistant managers are empowered, and there's never a scenario where it's like, "Well, I need to call my manager to find out." It's like, you run the show if you're on duty, which is kind of cool. Kayla, anything that you wanted to add to the chat, John? Yes.
I mean, I was kind of going to say the same thing. So, yeah, kind of what John said. You have to like figure out, just like you have to kind of think fast on your feet.
I was going to say, oh, sorry.
I was saying, go ahead. That's what I was saying. Yeah.
So we are all the leaders of the team. And this is going to happen in some way, shape, or form during the summer season. That either John gets sick, somebody has a car accident, somebody's bike has a flat, and I kind of
somebody's bike has a flat. Who could that?
Somebody's bike
Who
has a
could
flat.
that?
Yeah, I wonder.
Anywho, I kind of have it in the back of my mind as a drawback, but just more of an expectation that there's probably going to be just like 1 or 2 days in the summer that you weren't scheduled to work and you weren't scheduled to do something where you're just going to have to step in and help the team. So keep that in mind. All right. And I kind of like write it off. I've already got the 2, John is 6 days done, then I've gotten through the rest of winter.
Yeah, I haven't gotten sick this season.
You haven't,
See,
so
you
you're
shouldn't-
going
you
to.
shouldn't say that.
You shouldn't say that.
You're supposed to.
Avoid the office.
I'm on board to get sick. I'm ready.
I used to do that too
It happens
once a
every
year.
season. Change of seasons usually get me. I will make sure if I do get sick that it's done before you go back to school.
No.
Jack's sick, so you must be next. Yeah, you
Good.
think you're next.
Anyway. Cool. So yeah, I did want to be very open and transparent on some of that stuff, right? I do want to cover the pay, and for this part, I would encourage you guys to, again, you don't need to copy down everything, but it is worthwhile to have a range. And the assistant managers get a dual income, which means that they get paid off what they personally sell, and they also get paid off of what the office sells. Okay, so in terms of personal sales, the low end for an assistant manager in the summer is $10,000 sold. And there's two ways that can shake out. One is that they're consistently doing appointments every week, right? And the majority of my assistant managers do appointments every single week where even if it's part-time, just 5 or 8 or 10 a week, they're steadily making progress. And even if they never have a really big week where they go hard or sell a ton, they can get to $10,000 just from consistency, right? I have other assistant managers, and this is very few, very rare, but I have some assistant managers where I don't have them do much of any appointments at all through the summer. But there's a 2-week period where we have the biggest competition of the year. We call it the Super Bowl of the Vector year. And we turn them loose, and they'll sell $10,000 for that one competition period. And then the majority of my assistant managers do both, right? Where they sell consistently every week, and they go big for the Super Bowl. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that's kind of how sales shakes out. So low end is $10,000, and if you're at $0 in sales today, you'd make $2,000. And if you were already at Dirty 30, you'd make $3,000. By the way, I didn't include any bonuses. I think you guys know that you can get monthly bonuses, right? Once you hit $20,000 in sales, you can get 35, 40, 45, all the way on up to 50% commission. A, we'll cover that later when you guys are just closer to it. B, it makes my life easier when I'm doing math to just have to worry about Dirty 30.
Yeah.
Right. Anyway, middle of the road, this is someone who is selling consistently on a weekly basis, and they step up for the Super Bowl. Would be $20,000 to $30,000 sold, and they'd make between $5,000 and $10,000 just off their personal sales alone. And then on the high end would be an assistant manager selling $30,000 to $50,000. By the way, John, you and I haven't talked about this yet, and I know you've got a full course load this summer, so we'll talk about it. But I'd like to see if we could go for that high end. I think
it'll be my last opportunity for an All-American, realistically, before I go back to Japan.
Yeah, I think it'd be cool to get you 30
I
to
just want
50 grand
to
sales in
make
a campaign. Hell yeah, dude. Hell yeah. And obviously if you sell 30 to 50 grand, you'll make $10,000 plus.
Yeah, that's all
Right.
right.
So that's just off personal sales, and we don't even need to pay you off the office.
Mhm.
It is what it is, right? But here's how the office pay works. So the assistant managers, they get paid anywhere from 0.5% to 3% off of what's called new business. And new business is simply reps that are under $30,000 in sales. And the simple reason for that is that once someone hits $30,000 in sales, they've kind of got it, and they really don't need much direct management, you know? And then this isn't an exact science. It's we always work it out at the beginning of summer. But roughly, someone who's making 0.5% is working about 5 to 10 hours a week in the office. 2% is more like 20, 25 hours a week in the office. And then 3% is 35 hours on up. And the percentage is a combination of how many hours you're working plus how much responsibility you're taking on. Yes, sir.
Why does it skip 1%?
Just for simplicity. That's all. Again, this isn't even a perfect science. It's,
Gotcha.
you know, personally, I'll be honest, I don't even like to compare how much we make to hourly pay, for the simple fact that we don't get paid for the hours we work. We get paid for what we bring to the hours that we work. But I know that you guys are used to getting paid in hours. So I try to give you at least a correlation, So yeah, that's why it's an estimate to kind of give you some perspective based on what you're used to. Okay, and then just to give you a range, I can't promise you and I can't guarantee you what the office will sell, but I know what we've sold before and I can make an educated guess, right? The worst summer I have ever had was right around $175,000 in sales. Okay. If you're making 0.5%, that's $875 in overrides, and 3% would be $5,000. Actually, I think I did this on 2%. I think that was the highest I did. I typically only pay one or two people, my key people, 3%, and then everybody else is between 0.5% and 2%. Also, the person who makes 3% is working typically 35, 40 or more hours in the office. Happens. Yeah, man. But anyway, so $875 to $5,000 there. The middle of the road. By the way, I'll just tell you, my average summer over the course of the last 5 years combined is right at $300,000. When I average my worst one, my best one, and all the three in the middle, $300,000 is pretty standard. And 0.5% is $1,500, and 2% is $9,000. It doesn't suck. That's too much. It's too much. And then high. So far, I'll just tell you guys, my highest summer so far was $400,000 in new business. And this year, I really think that we could even blow that out of the water. Okay. I'm not going to promise it. We have to fight for it. And quite frankly, we haven't done it yet. We didn't do it this past year, but I think we can. But $400,000 on up, and 0.5% would be $2,000, and 2% would be $12,000. That's too much. It's way too much.
I have just random question. What did you do last year for summer? The last summer we just 2016 or 17? 17, yeah. What did you do that summer? Just out of
I had this number. Actually, I'll tell you in a second. Yes.
And all this is added to the personal sales?
Yes. Yep. Now, and you can understand, and I'm going to show you some examples in a second, but you can understand typically if someone's on the low end of personal sales, it's because they're working a lot more hours in the office. So typically you get the low end on personal sales and the high end on office sales, or at least a higher percentage, right? Conversely, if someone is really low on the percentage side, they're only doing 5 or 10 hours a week in the office, we would expect that person to be doing more on the high side of personal sales. So it's uncommon. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's uncommon that someone earns the low end of personal sales and the low end of office sales. And it's equally uncommon that they earn the high end of personal sales and the high end of office sales. It's usually counter to each other. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Right? So anyway, I'll show you some real world examples from the last 3 years. So by the way, I opened this location in 2013, and I didn't have any assistant managers. I just ran it myself, so I don't have any examples of that. 2014 was a bad year for me. I had one person who was supposed to be a key player in the office who tried to burn the place down. Didn't succeed for the long term.
Wait, he actually tried.
I was just saying, it was like literally, or like
in every sense of the word, except for a literal fire.
Okay.
I don't know why. But really just tried to sabotage the office and did a really good job of it. We got John out of that summer, and that's about it. So we don't really talk much about 2014. It was like the darkest.
2013 and then 2015.
It was the darkest year. It really
the dark
was.
ages.
It really was. John was
And I never knew. It's like sunshine's rainbow.
Yeah, but anyway, because you were a rep. But anyway,
Were
so
you here in 2014?
That's when I started.
That's when he started.
Oh.
But anyway, so 2013, the office was brand new. I didn't have any assistant managers. 2014 was just a dark year. We don't really talk about much. Here's the last 3 years. So 2015, this is when Ben Howard was my sales manager. We sold $185,000 in new business. Now he was working about 50 hours a week, and he made 3% off the office. And then he personally sold $20,000. And what's pretty cool is he, for May and June, only worked in the office, and then in July and August, he went out and personally sold, and he made $11,000 in total income. And then what's kind of cool is that he was considered for a district manager promotion to essentially open up his own franchise, but decided he really liked personally selling Cutco and he'd rather pursue the CSP route. So now he's a career Cutco sales rep and was the Silver Cup champion last year. So Ben Howard, 2015, baby. 2016, John Tevis. Now, John Tevis started in 2014, was an assistant manager around school in 2015.
Branch.
That's a lot. 2014 was an assistant manager around school. 2015 was a branch manager where he ran his own franchise for the summer. 2016 came and ran my office as my lead assistant manager. 2016 was a senior branch manager, ran his own office for the second time, surpassed 6 figures in total career sales. And 2017, he's going to be on the events team. And I don't know if he'll be qualified as a CSP or not, but essentially,
150K.
yeah. So we'll be on the events team and working towards CSP. And what's nice is that when he graduates from college in 2018, he'll be offered a position of his choice to be either a district manager or a CSP with us. And what's awesome is obviously if he chooses to go interview at other companies, we'll support him and may even encourage him to at least see what's out there because he's been with us since high school. But right now, and obviously anything can happen, but right now he's looking at potentially pursuing the CSP role after college, which is kind of cool. But anyway, so 2016, the office, we had a low year. That was our recovery time from 2014. So it wasn't a typical year. It's kind of like when the Ravens won the Super Bowl and then all their best players got taken away. So they're like, all right, we got to rebuild. So we didn't have a super great office sales, but he made 3%. And then he sold $5,000. I think that was a combination of he was working in the office a lot and B, just at that point in his life was not really selling a whole lot of Cutcos, right?
Yeah.
But still made $5,500, which in the grand scheme of thing is not a terrible summer income, right? And then Bryce Seamer in 2017, he did a pretty nice job. He made 2% of the office sales. We sold $300,000, which was, again, that's right where my average has been. And he sold $28,000 personally. So if you notice, the office sold the middle volume. He made 2%, which is a higher volume, and he sold on the high end of the personal sales, right?
Yeah.
Plus he was at Dirty 30 going into the summer, so that helped. But he ended up making over $15,000 this past summer. And I've had 4 or 5 assistant managers make $15,000 in a summer. I've had a great many make $10,000 in a summer. But what I tell all my assistant managers is kind of plan on making $5,000. All right, kind of plan on making $5,000. $5,000's already a really good college income. And there's definitely an upside. But I'd rather have you go in expecting to make $5,000 and then you get surprised by making 10 or 15,000, right? Than have you go in expecting to make $15,000 and then you only make 5,500 and you're like, oh, 5,500 shucks. It's all about perspective and framing, right? So I definitely don't want to over promote the opportunity. The upside definitely exists, and quite frankly, this year we really are poised for a growth year. We just had the best year ever in Anne Arundel County history, to the best of my knowledge. Plus, we have Jack getting promoted to be a district manager. We have Bryce and Kayla getting promoted to be branch managers. We have Ben Howard as an established CSP. We have John Tevis as one of our key sales leaders on the team. We have you guys in the mix. We are poised for a growth year, and I do expect that. But again, I just don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. So that's why I want to kind of give you the conservative estimates. You guys feel good about that, though? Okay. And then the only other thing to be aware of is that for the assistant manager overrides, we withhold that until the end of summer. And the way it works is actually really cool. And these guys can vouch. It goes into essentially a vector savings. So if you look at your pay stubs on Vector Connect, you can see them on there under my account. It'll show you how much you made in personal sales, your commission, blah, blah, blah. And then underneath it, it'll say assistant manager overrides withholding, right? And the number will get big. And it's like having every week it gets bigger. We withhold it for a couple of reasons. And I do want you guys to be aware of this. Number one is that the way the summer income flows is that May is usually the smallest sales month of the summer. And that's when you're first coming in and you're getting used to things. And because it's the smallest sales month, the assistant manager overrides are the lowest they will be, right? But if we work hard in May, June June is the second biggest sales month out of the year.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Then if we continue to work hard, July is the biggest sales month out of the year. And we don't have to work as hard in the office. We work hard to build the team and train the team and prepare the team in May and June. So that's when we do the work. And then in July, the team's already rocking. We just have a really big sales competition. And then just like on a soccer team, our starting players go out and just run the show, right? So July, we don't have to work as hard and we get paid the most. And then in August, that is the third biggest sales month out of the year. And it's also one of the easiest months because it's pretty much just winding down before students go back to school, right? So the flow, if you don't get paid the same every single week, it looks like that. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Number two is depending on the office volume and depending on your percentage, you may not make a whole lot of money in a single week just off assistant manager overrides. And these guys can vouch. Actually, Kayla, you were an assistant manager this summer. I forget, by the way, Kayla was an assistant manager in training, so similar but a little different. What was I paying you this summer? 0.5%, 1%?
I think it was like 0.5%.
Cool.
And then towards the end, it was like 1%. I'm not really sure.
Cool. Right, but on a weekly basis, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was usually somewhere between like 50, 100, 150 bucks a week going into the assistant manager pay. Right, that's not a super high amount, but if you make that for 16 weeks and you have a couple of the weeks where you make 2 or 3 or 400, it becomes a really nice chunk. Does that make sense? Right, so we just let that accumulate and ride throughout the summer. And then instead of like, oh, I made 50 bucks or oh, I made 100 bucks, it's, oh shit, there's $1,000 in there. Makes sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the last thing, number 3, the most important, is I never want a manager to try to lead someone because they need money. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Right? I never want our leaders to say, ooh, I need you to sell because I gotta anything. Right? So we just have the assistant manager pay go into savings. And the money that you make on a weekly basis comes from your personal sales. And that way you're getting paid, you're well rewarded, and the assistant managers do, you already saw, they get paid pretty well. But that way you're just not motivated to have other people work because you need money, and that's just good all around. Does that make sense? So that's that. And then at the end of summer, what's really nice is that your assistant manager with holdings, it can be a pretty nice chunk. Like John, at the end of, I already know the number.
Okay.
So if you don't know it, I know it.
I have a base estimate. I think I can just go.
Do you remember how much was in your leadership savings at the end of summer in 2016?
I thought it was right about 5,000, if I remember correctly.
A little under that. It was $4,500, right? But John made whatever he made in personal income. It was $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000, and then he had $4,000 just sitting in a nest egg, right? For Kayla, not including your manager investments that you've made, how much do you have just from office overrides that have just kind of accumulated? By the way, Kayla's never pulled money out of her management savings yet.
800.
Cool. All right, and keep in mind, Kayla was a assistant manager in training in the summer, and then being an assistant manager in the fall is a little bit of a different animal. Like a lot of the stuff is not the same. But $800 just kind of sitting in an account, and she's like, yeah, just pay it forward, right? Bryce actually ended up this summer, and again, Bryce was on the high side of a lot of stuff. But at the end of summer, also, he actually was selling so much that he also had part of his personal sales taken out of his paycheck because he was like, I don't want to just blow it all at the casino. I want to save. And
So you can choose to have some of your personals put in the little.
Yeah, and Bryce, his financial goal is to pay his own college tuition at Virginia Tech. So he was like, hey, I don't need all that spending money. I'd rather save it towards tuition. So this wasn't all office pay. This was office pay plus. But I know at the end of summer, he had over $10,000 just in leadership savings. And at the end of summer, he cashed out all but $2,000 of it and then just wrote a check to Virginia Tech and paid for the vast majority of his tuition. Just cool. It's really freaking cool. And then a lot of times people leave it in there. And part of Leadership Academy, if you do that with us next fall, does involve saving, and we teach money management skills and wealth building skills. And we do require Leadership Academy candidates to save money as part of leadership training. And a lot of times our assistant managers just like, yeah, I made all this money. I really don't need it right now. Just put that in my savings. And then they parlay it.
So theoretically, it would go like assistant manager and leadership academy, because like you need leadership academy before being a district or a branch manager.
So here's what's cool. And I was thinking about this earlier, and I'm going to cover this in a second. In the spring, I do essentially Leadership Academy Light, which is where I will teach you how to be an assistant manager. Right? I'll teach you how to be a really good assistant manager through the course of the spring semester. And I'll cover what that looks like in just a moment, but I call it like Leadership Academy Light version. In the summertime, some of the best leadership training you can get is being a leader, right? And it's just like in the military, you know, you can go to officer training school, but everybody looks at the officers in officer training school like, oh, those guys, right? And then the ones that actually just do it out in the field, they are the best officers. And even the ones who have been to officer training school still need to get field experience. That's being an assistant manager in the summer. That is the most highly accelerated leadership training you could possibly get. And then in the fall and spring, the Leadership Academy is a different version where we're training you to be a business owner, right? And certainly that could be in Vector as a branch manager, a district manager, or a CSP, or it could be anywhere. What's awesome is that my wife has never sold a Cutco. That's not true. She accidentally sold an Ultimate set one time. That's a true story. I'll tell you later. But she accidentally sold an Ultimate set. She also accidentally sold a buy three, get one free. So I guess technically she's gotten her second promotion.
I wish I could just accidentally sell.
It's a good story. But she's never been a sales rep. She's never read the training manual to someone. She's never cut rope or leather or a penny ever in her life. But she's been through Leadership Academy, right? She comes and she sits in on my Leadership Academies, and she runs her own business now. And what's awesome and I love is she does everything we teach in a business that is completely unrelated to what our business does.
What does she do?
She's a virtual assistant, or rather she runs a virtual assistant company where she's got 20 employees and I think over 50 clients now, which is friggin' awesome. Super proud of her. But anyway, we treat in the Leadership Academy in the fall and spring, we'll teach you how to be a business owner, whether that's in Vector or not. And then obviously that does open up the next level of promotions, which could be branch or district or CSP, if you want to continue getting promoted internally, of course. So anyway, that was a general answer, but there you go.
Can I just vouch on that? Like, because I started in the summer, right? So having been a slight assistant manager, mostly a sales rep, I pretty much got into Leadership Academy right at the end of the summer. Some people are like, oh, because it started in the winter, whatnot, it's a longer time frame. You have to go through 2 winters before you do that. But I'm going to tell you, just watching like Bryce, I think people who start in the winter or early spring, they really got the leg up.
You know, I started in the winter, right?
Huh?
You know, I started in winter.
That too.
Hashtag just saying.
Just saying. And what that has done for Bryce now, besides the traits that he's now been inherited, or he's now developed as a leader, he's now I would argue, the top Leadership Academy, new Leadership Academy candidate in Leadership Academy, if not one of the top in it, just because of that Leadership Academy Light, that assistant manager work, sales manager work that he did during the summer. So I think it's extra awesome for you guys. I know this is 2 summers away, but if you're looking at an opportunity for a leadership position or running your own office or just being a better leader in general, like John, being under John, it's good. It's good.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Also, don't let Bryce hear you say any of that or it'll go to his head. So let me wrap up with what's next. And I'm going to ask you to take this down. Just to be clear, right? If you hear all this stuff and you're like, yeah, I'm really not about it, right? If you're like, man, that's not something I'd be excited about. It's not something I want. Cool. But if it is something that you want, I'll show you how to get it. Okay. So there's a couple things. Number 1 is personal sales. And I put up here as applicable. Quite honestly, you're all in different situations. I know for Kane, you're leaving today.
Yeah.
So I'm really not going to ask a whole lot of you in terms of personal sales, right?
20 grand.
Yeah.
You got 24 hours.
I tried to push them. Didn't work out. It's okay. I did what I could. Sean, your situation's a little different because we still have you here for 2 weeks. And obviously, If Kane sells nothing, we're like, yeah, I kind of get it, If you went for 2 weeks and sold nothing, be like, hey, what the hell? Right? And then obviously, Crystal, you're staying local through the spring. So it really kind of depends on your personal situation, your school situation. So personal sales as applicable, and we're reasonable, as you can probably tell. So you can probably already tell what that looks like for you personally, right? The PDC conference, again, for Kane, I know that you're going to be gone. I'd love to get you to the PDC conference, but I just don't know that it kind of makes sense.
Yeah. What is that?
It's the one they talked about at the division meeting. It's professional development conference at our year-end banquet. I'd like to get you there, but I just don't know that it's reasonable. Sean, I'd like to talk to you about it.
Okay. Where's it at?
Connecticut.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to talk to you
Do you
about it.
like fly out as a team, or is it
We
like
do typically carpool.
Caravan.
Oh, caravan.
I'm not really familiar where Connecticut is, so like
It's right near New York. Just
Oh,
right
sweet.
next to New York
Oh, yeah.
City.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
you never know. Maybe.
Right, I'd like to talk to you about it. I know that's right around the same time you go to school.
Yeah.
So like I said, right, we'll figure it out and we'll make out a custom plan for each of you. Here's what I do know is that we have a summer kickoff conference. It's usually in April. The dates are to be announced. Last year we did it the first weekend in April. It'll be somewhere in that ballpark. And again, right, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it, but the ideal is that we have every single assistant manager who's going to be in for the summer at that one. Because that's a big manager training, and that's also where you officially get promoted in front of the entire Northeast region. And if you thought the division meeting was big, wait until you see 7 divisions that size. Anyway, plus our region manager, who's over $250 million in sales. That's insane.
Region managers.
Who's that? Who's
His name
that?
is Earl Kelly. Actually, when you come to
He's an
PDC,
amazing man.
he'll be
I
like,
got a
yeah,
text from him. Yeah. Probably like on a Mac one, but yeah, I recognize that name.
that's awesome. And then this is the one that we will all do, is we'll have 3 to 5 leadership training calls throughout the course of the semester. And I was talking to Jessica about this last night, just so you guys know. From now until the end of January is like peak time. Actually, January, I mentioned already, June, July, and August are the top 3 sales months out of the year. January is the 4th biggest, and it's the largest one outside the summer. And it's because of winter break. But now until the end of January, we're just grinding and hustling and maximizing the 4th biggest sales month out of the year. And you're going to see, right? We have some students leaving today. We have a couple students leaving after this weekend or over the weekend. We have a couple of you guys here essentially till the end of January. Then some people stay, and that's just normal. And then we go to the PDC conference. We have leadership training there. We also have our year-end award ceremony. And then we come back and the dust settles, right? At the end of February, I'm going to Las Vegas. I want that's a lie. That's soon. At the end of February, I'm going to Las Vegas for a conference. I told you guys before, I do personal coaching with Grant Cardone, the author of the 10X Rule, and he's hosting a 3-day conference in Vegas. So I'm heading out for that, which I'm tremendously excited for. Mm-hmm. And then in March, I'm going to Germany for almost 2 weeks, which is pretty exciting. Vector's paying for almost everything. Thank you, Uncle Vector.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, so those are my 2 like big travel things that I have. So what I would like to do, and this leads me to the last bullet, is I'd like you guys to get me a copy of your school schedule. Okay. And also if you're an athlete, get me your practice schedule, the game schedule, right? And what I would like to do, and by the way, just to be clear, I'm not asking for any commitments right now. I'm not asking like, yes, I'm definitely going to be in, right? If you know you're out and you're like, yeah, this just has no interest to me, cool. Let me know that and no worries, right? But if you start the training, that's not a commitment that you will 100% be an assistant manager this summer from you or from us. We'll ask for that commitment closer to like April, But basically it's to start the training. And if you're like, yeah, I'd like to do the training, I'm interested in at least creating that option. I want to learn. Awesome. Get me your school schedule and I'll do my very best to set up a training schedule that works for all of our availabilities. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So I know this isn't like, I know it's not like a definitive plan because it does depend on your personal and school situation, but does that give you at least enough of a gauge? Like, all right, I kind of get what that would look like. Mm-hmm. Wonderful.
How long would the training calls last?
My guess is 60 minutes.
All right, yeah, that's easy.
Yeah, maybe 90.
Mhm.
Definitely not more than 90. That you wouldn't be
Yeah.
focused on a phone call for longer than that.
Mhm.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah, but typically 60-ish minutes. Yeah. Let me stop there. That was all the content I wanted to cover with you guys. Any questions that any of you guys have on any of the stuff? Was this good, by the way?
Mhm.
Yeah. You were talking that Kayla was an assistant manager in training. Is that what we would be if we were to come back into the
No.
summer?
No.
No.
You would be an assistant manager.
Okay.
So actually, this is worth covering.
Wait,
Ah.
okay, never mind.
So this is worth covering, just so you can kind of get a gauge of what this looks like. I'll show you our depth chart, just like a sports team. So obviously, I'm the GM. I run the office. For our senior leadership team, we have Nick Phelps, who, by the way, I didn't talk about Nick at all today. For the simple fact, and I do love this, he's now a district manager. He started as a sales rep with me, worked as an assistant manager with me, did leadership training with me, but he no longer works for me. He works for himself, right? And he's part of our squad, he's part of our team, but I don't count him as anyone who's under me because he is at my level, which I think is freaking cool. I think that's awesome, and kudos to him, right? This summer, we will have Jack Meyer in the exact same spot. Where Jack, by the way, started in August. So less than a year from when he started, he'll be at peer level with me, which is pretty awesome. We have Bryce and Kayla. They will be branch managers. And a branch manager, I think you guys know the concept of it, but they essentially run their own office for the summer, right? But they are still college students. So at the end of summer, they close their office, go back to school. It doesn't conflict. Yes.
So are all these offices just like vacant, or like how are they just like
So
able
we have,
to just
yeah,
move into
that's
their
fair.
office?
That's a great question. We have locations that are smaller territories that wouldn't support an office year round. But in the summertime, because it's our four of the biggest months of the year, in the summertime, we can go in, run a highly profitable, successful office. And it's a smaller territory that we wouldn't put a district manager, but in the summertime, it's a great spot for a branch. Yeah, it's pretty cool. We have, in the DC Metro Division, I think we have 9 locations that we could put district managers. And as of right now, only 5 are filled. We're promoting 2 more this summer. So we will still have openings for district managers. But we have, I could be wrong, but I think there's 16 branch locations. Yeah, so there's space to put people,
Right.
which is kind of cool. And then what's nice is if we fill up all of our spots, we can take some of Pennsylvania's or some of New York's or some of
I got you.
take them away. I'll put John down here. So John is basically, his main role will be doing events, but he's also going to be working as a field assistant. So I'll put him here. All right, so this is our current established leadership team. These are the positions that I want to fill. I want to fill a sales manager role. And a sales manager is someone who is primarily focused. They will be doing recruiting, but their primary focus is on sales and development. Remember the 3 KRAs? Right? I also want to have a recruiting manager. And the recruiting manager will do some sales stuff, some development stuff, but their primary focus will be on recruitment, right? I also want to have a productivity manager. And the productivity manager, their primary focus will be on taking the manager hotline and helping reps close deals and get referrals and all that stuff. And also one-on-one management and helping reps book up their appointments and those things. So those are the 3 key positions I want to fill. And then I'd like to have 1 or 2 full-time assistant managers. And when I say full-time, when I say full-time, that would be like 20 to 25 hours in the office, but plus selling, it works out to 30, 35, 40 hours a week. That makes sense, right? And then beyond that, I'd like to have 3 to 4 assistant managers in training. Okay, and an assistant manager in training is someone who starts in the summer. They've had zero leadership training, but they're the right kind of person. Okay. And if this were the summer, I would be talking to all 4 of you guys, not about training in the spring and becoming an assistant manager in the summer. I'd be talking about, hey, you want to be an assistant manager like right now, tomorrow? Cool. And we have, it's kind of cool. We have an on-the-job training program. This is what Kayla did in the summer. They don't make more than 0.5%, right? They're not super highly paid, and their office hours never exceed 10. Like, it's super part-time, super low-key. But if we get 4 people working 10 hours a week, that is 1 full-time. You guys get the concept, right? So you guys, you'd be in these ones, and then people who start in the summer would be assistant managers in training.
For like the sales recruiting and productivity manager, are those like assistant managers just like filling different roles, or are they like completely different?
Exactly. It's just like everybody's in the soccer team, but you get the strikers and the wingers. It's the exact same kind of concept. They're just specialized players.
Yeah. Do they have like, obviously, do they have different pay, or?
The pay always works out the same.
Okay.
It's always the same. What's customized is the duties that they play, and then their exact schedule with what hours are they in the office, what are their exact roles when they're here. There's no one assistant manager who's going to do every single thing I put on the screen when I cover the duties. Like, that would be insane. Right? So, and by the way, maybe I didn't preface that clearly, so that's worth saying. I covered like, hey, what are the duties under recruiting? What are the duties under sales? There are some that every assistant manager will do, right? Like the Facebook Jumpstart is a big one. Setting PRs is a big one. Not every assistant manager runs interviews, right? Not every assistant manager runs PSP meetings or team meetings. Not every assistant. Does that answer that?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So the general outline is the same, but we specialize what duties. And one of the nice things, and I do think this is cool, just I'm biased, obviously, but the way that just Vector operates in general, I can't take full credit for being the most amazing district manager, although I do try. But just the way the Vector operates is that you guys get to have a say in this stuff, you know? Most companies, they just kind of tell you, like, hey, if you want to be an assistant manager, here's the duties, here's the blah, 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 right? And you take it or leave it. Here, you get to have a say. I remember doing this with Bryce, and I was talking to my wife about this last night, too, where when I talked to Bryce, it was actually at the PDC conference. And I told him, I was like, hey, by the way, he'd been talking about becoming an assistant manager. He was really excited about that. But I said, hey, I want to talk to you about being team captain, right? Like the #1 lead assistant manager. And very much like I did with you guys. I was like, hey, here's all the upside perks. Here's all the drawbacks, right? And I was like, take it or leave it, but what do you think? He goes, I want the lead one. And his conversation, I told one of you guys this, was that he played soccer for as long as he did, a long time. It was really good. Always wanted to be team captain, but was never given the shot, right? Never given the ball to be the team captain. He goes, this is my chance to do that. I've always wanted that kind of leadership role. It's really great. And then I walked through, much like I did with you guys. Actually, this whole workshop was taken from my notes from that meeting with Bryce this time last year, really. But I walked through, I was like, hey, here's all the duties. What are you thinking? And then we worked out what his duties would be and his schedule would be. And for him, he was taking 4 summer classes. Don't do that. That's just a bad decision, whether you're working or not. Don't do that. But we worked out like, all right, so here's when he's available around school, worked out a schedule, and then it came together. So I think I may be rambling. I apologize for that. But I do want to at least give you the gist of what that looks like. Did I accomplish that?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. These are great questions, by the way. Any others that you would like to ask?
Or even just from me, Caleb.
I'm going to come back to you guys in a second. Got you, Brent. Anything else for you guys first? All right. Kayla and John, I know Jack's on mute, so Jack, not ignoring you, just I know you're on mute. Anything that you guys would like to add? Good, bad, ugly, or otherwise?
So John was mentioning this, and you saw on the slide, like your assistant manager pay, it's kind of like going into a savings account with Vector till in the summer, which you can cash out. Obviously, it's your money, but when you're in the AM position, remember that curve we were talking about in terms of income? you really shouldn't be looking about how much you make on a weekly basis because it's not fair to yourself. And I know what it does to a mindset, and I've been in this place before, is, oh, I didn't really, the office didn't do so great this week. It was in the beginning of summer, that low end of the curve, and I felt at times like, oh, my work isn't as important, but it's completely the opposite. It's because that building period, you're not going to see the results up hand, right? It's a giant numbers game, like in terms of recruiting, finding the right people. You're not going to see those results immediately, and it's going to be really frustrating at times, but it does pay off. You just need to be consistent in that effort you put towards your work. And then, when that curve that goes up comes, if you've been consistent in doing that work, it'll go higher than it would, right?
Yeah, leadership is definitely an exercise in delayed gratification. We always get gratified, right? But it's just like starting a diet or a new workout plan. You don't go to the gym once and get swole, right? But you do it consistently and you get mad swole. I'm not cool. I try so hard. But you guys get it. It's kind of the same thing, right? You have to do the work consistently, and then the payoff comes. But the payoff is, even the year that someone tried to sabotage my office, we still ended up doing okay, right? Even John was like, from my perspective, from like they tried to burn the place down, John was like, yeah, it really was a great summer. Made 7, 5.
Let's see. So I did let's just say I did 15K just for simplicity. So that would be 2,000 and 5,000 times 30%. So that's about $3,500 that I made.
I know you made close to 5 though, because you had that one paycheck alone that was $1,700.
Well, I sold 1,500. Wow. Remember, I started midsummer, right? So I was your
that's
top rep with only half a summer.
So either way, in John's perspective, he was like, "This is wonderful. Nothing is wrong."
That's because we had good management staff.
Like me only.
Yeah.
Anyway, 2014, the dark years. We shouldn't talk about them as much as we have today. But anyway, yeah. I know where I was going with this. Sorry. Even that year, right, as dark and bleak as it seemed at times, a lot of times, it still came together and ended up great. And we got John Tevis from that and a couple other great people and great money and great sales. So it's never failed to come. It's just not like an hourly job where you get paid the same amount every single week, regardless of how good your work is, right? With Vector, it's work your ass off without making a whole ton of money right away. And then you're not working as hard and you're making stupid money, right? It always balances out, but it comes. Yeah, anyway, that's it. Anything else that you guys want to add? We're at 9:20, so we probably should wrap it pretty shortly.
Don't look at the AM pay on a weekly basis. I mean, it's just going to be in the savings account till the end of summer anyway. So you shouldn't be looking at it, but I know some of you guys don't peek. But yeah, just do your work consistently. Don't worry about it. It's just going to come by the end of the summer.
Cool, good. Well, hey, I appreciate you guys being here. It is 9:20. We went later than I anticipated. Partly, I'm going to stop recording. Partly because we had the conference call and that started us late. Stop.